I'm shocked I've never seen this mentioned on X or really at all online, but there are ruins in Montana that are really out of place. The area is/was guarded by the US military in black trucks, claiming that the site is a missile site, but in reality, the locals know what's there. I'll greentext my experience the one time we went hiking and didn't encounter any G-men. Be 14 years old living in Billings. Grandparents live in Yack, Montana. One summer during the second Bush administration, my parents sent me up to Yack to spend some weeks with my grandparents and cousins. The first few days it's rough going on my grandparents' farm, dealing with basically living off the grid, no Game Boy and no Xbox. My cousins were older and treated me fine, but the chores midsummer made me exhausted and stressed. One day my cousins asked me if I wanted to go four-wheeling with them and my grandpa. I agreed, and we head off in two trucks with the ATVs in the trailer headed northwest. I forget how long we traveled, but we eventually arrived to the trailhead. My three cousins and Grandpa all had ATVs, so I had to ride bitch with my cousin Simon. Grandpa told us assertively to stay on the trails as there were grizzlies in the area foraging, but they tend to stay away from the trails due to the noise. We set out the four of us with Grandpa at the lead. I remember how beautiful everything was heading down the trails. After a few hours, we stopped at a small lake, had lunch, laughing and joking. In the distance, we could see Garver Mountain. Grandpa told us about the secret military base hidden in the mountain. As a kid, I thought of games like Halo, full of super soldiers fighting aliens. Cousins were enamored by the idea. Grandpa warned them of the black helicopters and vans that arrested people getting too close. My cousins agreed not to head in that direction, but I knew they were lying. We packed up and set off to head back to the trucks, Grandpa again in the lead. About an hour into the drive, I realized my cousins aren't following Grandpa and heading towards the mountain. I yelled to Simon, asking him if this was a good idea. He reassured me it would be great. Eventually, we hit a fence with some warning signs telling us to stay out. We traveled for about 20 more minutes through some thick forest until we reached a break in the fence. The break was big enough to ride through. I remember the screech of the fencing against the sides of the four-wheeler. We traveled down valley for a bit as a river ran near the mountain. Eventually, we see columns next to trees, old ones that kinda looked Egyptian, diagram enclosed, 500 hours in Photoshop. We stopped and got on foot looking around, realizing we passed a large ruined building. We started exploring the grounds. There were carvings of bird people everywhere. Other carvings included circles and triangles in odd patterns. My cousins were laughing about how awesome this all was, and they felt like Indiana Jones. We approached the main building, and it was massive but overgrown. There were old boxes everywhere with army stuff stamped all on the outside and rusted generators and equipment in the center. I was nervous. I wanted to leave, but my cousins continued on into the main building. More bird people carvings everywhere, and a massive stone pillar in the center. At that point, we hear a helicopter echoing through the valley. My cousins joke that it's the men in black and we should run. This freaked me out and I started crying as we ran back to the ATVs. We peeled out of the site and headed back towards the hole in the fence. My cousins were laughing while I was crying. Waiting for us at the hole were two big black SUVs, which I thought odd considering how thick the forest was. Overhead I could hear helicopters. It sounded like more than one. The guys waiting had guns drawn, and they were wearing normal clothes, like the operator guy from the K-memes. They arrested us and brought us to a ranger station where we stayed for a day in a small cabin attached to the building. My cousins were freaked out and asked for help, but every time they were told to shut up by the men outside the door. Eventually my grandpa showed up and told us we were all going home. No one spoke to us as we left. The ATVs were gone, and the other truck we drove was gone too. My grandpa said they took them, and to never talk about this again. The entire drive home was quiet, and when we got to my grandparents' house, my grandma was crying and hugged us. They told us to never talk about this to anyone, and if anyone asked, we broke down in the woods and Grandpa rescued us. We never talked about it with each other or to my grandparents, and certainly never to my parents. About a year later in school, I overheard someone talking to another kid about the hidden temple in the Kootenai forest. I asked him about it, and he recounted a story about how his dad and grandpa had found the same place while hunting one winter. The kid described things perfectly. Fearing the government guys, I told him to never talk about it. Even now, I'm a bit uneasy discussing this. I'm not sure if anyone else has ever been up there. I tried using Google Earth and other providers to try and find it, but no luck. I'm not sure if the trees cover everything up or if the government edits things like that out. Similarly, searching online pulls up nothing. I'll never forget the birdmen carvings and all the odd shapes carved into the weathered rock. At my aunt and uncle's in rural Wisconsin, late at night, I can't sleep. Go outside and have a smoke. It's October, so pretty chilly, but no snow. Super quiet, newish moon, so also very dark. They live on a lot of land that's relatively uncleared, except for the house and some outbuildings. It's all trees and trails with a big boggy patch in the middle. Still not sleepy, so I start wandering their plot, take a trail into the trees. Come to a little outcropping with the bog before me. Still very quiet. Wasn't exactly spooked, but I got that sudden feel of eyes on me. Look around, but nothing but moon shadows and reeds. Something laughs at me. Couldn't tell if it was in my head or actual sounds, but it was very loud, unfriendly laughter, like a joke at my expense. Brush animals burst into a frenzy all around. Dozens of birds winged the fuck out of there, squawking, and what sounded like a deer maybe crashed through the brush. Stood there like a frozen idiot while the nature around me noped the fuck out. I soon followed suit. Didn't sleep a wink that night. Uncle gets up with the dawn and finds me nursing a coffee in the kitchen. Tell him what happened earlier. Try to laugh about it, but he seems unpleasantly surprised and resigned. Stares at me for a moment, takes a deep breath, tells me to follow him. Uncle leads me to the cellar and we go down the steps. Haven't been down there in years and years. There's a door on the far wall I didn't remember ever seeing. Ask him where the fuck that goes after he opens it to stark blackness. He gives me a look as he snags a lantern from a shelf by the door and says, "Old root cellar my grandpa dug. Follow me." Walk into a small square room that has a rough tunnel in the back corner. Looks kinda like a mine shaft, but rather short. Wood trusses every few feet, you know what I mean. Tunnel isn't very long. We walk for maybe a full minute. Come to the end of the tunnel, a rough door. It's just a slab of old wood held in place by some cinder block along the bottom. We move it out of the way and step through into the gray dawn. I look around, blinking the dark from my eyes and adjusting to the light. Realize we're just a handful of yards downwind from where I had stood last night overlooking the bog. Look at my uncle to see him studying me expectantly. "This is about where you were last night, yeah?" All I can do is nod. I hadn't told him where I'd heard the laughter. He starts telling me about how his family first settled on this land from Norway. Strange sounds and things had always plagued the boggy area. His grandfather had done most of the building and clearing of the land and had inexplicably died shortly after digging out the root cellar. He had apparently been obsessed with this root cellar and had never allowed anyone but himself inside, not even just to grab a jar of pickles. After his grandpa died, my uncle and his brother finally went down to investigate the root cellar. That's when they found the tunnel. At this point, he motions me to go back through the door, and we walk about halfway back up the tunnel. Here at a slight bend, he stops, and looking at me, moves the light close to the wall. There's a hole here that I hadn't noticed on our way through the first time. My uncle, visibly pale now, and with a slight shake to his hand, asks if I want to take a look. Something in his voice tells me I shouldn't, but I can't resist. I peer over the rim of this hole, absolutely pitch black, and the light seems to be swallowed by it in an off-putting way, like it's barely penetrating in. I shit balls as I hear that same laughter again, but so much louder. Nearly break my neck spinning around to look at my uncle. His eyes are wide, he heard it too. Seems frozen in place. Against my very instincts, I look again. Eyes or something, dimly reflecting the lantern back at us. Dozens of them. I stare in petrified fascination as a wet, fetid air seems to leak from the hole. More growling laughter comes with this stench. Something finally breaks within us and we absolutely book it back up the tunnel and into the cellar. "What the fuck was that?" I yelled at him as we catch our breath by the now firmly slammed root cellar door. Uncle shakes his head. He has no idea. Said he hadn't been in the cellar himself since the day he and his brother had first investigated and discovered that. Over the years, he had tried to convince himself that it had just been a youthful fancy. When I told him earlier about the laughter, it brought that crumbling down. He laughs shakily and says ignorance is bliss, but he felt like he had to take me down there. I agree as I stare at the thick door of the root cellar. He tells me how, though autopsy had ruled his grandfather's death as natural causes, his grandmother had a different story to tell. According to her, his grandfather had been found belly up in the bog with his eyes scooped out and no other visible injuries. Apparently, the rest of the family at the time had reacted very poorly to this, but the grandmother had been the one to discover his corpse. At this moment, I recalled my uncle's brother had committed suicide, but I didn't know anything more than that. I hesitantly asked him about this. He looked at me a long while. "Yes," he said. He was found dead of a gunshot wound in the chest, and no eyes. After this, my uncle actually started to cry, so we just got blind drunk that day after he called off work, and we've never spoken about that morning again. I gathered from some further drunken ramblings before I passed out that he's terrified he'll be found dead one day with his eyes gouged out. He's still alive, and they live there still. I don't know what I'll do if he's found dead like that. Why do they still live there? I'd be out, bro. I'd be out. One of my all-time favorites from 2013. I'm from Bangladesh, and although the major cities have developed infrastructure, some of the more isolated villages are pretty much like the Dark Ages. There's no electricity, no power for lights, or any of that stuff. They're surrounded by dense, thick forests, and the villagers have stories of witches and jinn that live in the trees and sometimes come into the villagers' huts and possess them. When I still lived in Bangladesh, my mom worked as a representative for poor villages. Her job was to basically go to villages around the country, provide them with food and aid, and establish rapport with the people in charge. She would sometimes take me and my sister along with her. This happened when I was about 9 or 10 and is something that has stayed with me to this day. We went to a particularly isolated village. The closest town with electricity and any sort of law enforcement was at least 2 hours away by car. Right when we got there, something was off. Apparently, one of the villagers' sons was acting very strangely. They had locked him up in a barn, and people were gathering like it was a circus show. My mom forbade me to go there, but while she was busy working, I snuck over. What I saw chilled me to the bone. The kid was about my age, naked, foaming at the mouth, and covered in oozing sores. A man threw a live chicken into the barn, and the kid grabbed it by its neck and bit its head off. One of the men told me the kid was possessed by a churail, a witch spirit with the face of a woman that can only be recognized by its backwards placed feet. They're twisted 180 degrees and face the back of its body. Being a city boy, I just laughed it off. Later that day, I met a boy and a girl from the village, and we began kicking around a soccer ball I had brought. Then I went home. That night, while everyone was asleep, I woke up suddenly. I looked out the window to the barn where the boy was kept, only a few yards away. I saw the doors slowly open and something came out. It was a huge, towering figure, at least 10 feet tall, its face covered by black, scraggly hair. It was wearing a stained white robe and walked with a strange limp. In the full light of the moon, as it got closer, I could see its feet. They were backwards. My heart started pounding. I wanted to run to my mom in the next room, but my body was frozen in fright. I watched as the thing got closer and closer until it was only a few feet from my window. I looked at its face and my blood went cold. It was the face of the little girl I had been playing soccer with earlier that day. At that point, I don't know what happened. All I remember is blacking out and waking up the next day. There was a huge uproar because apparently the possessed boy was found dead in the barn. I couldn't find the little girl anywhere. I asked around, but no one could even remember knowing a girl with the description I gave them. I tracked down the other boy I had been playing soccer with, and he didn't know either. He said that he only remembered the two of us playing that day. Be me. Work as a cook in a dive. It's around midnight on a weekday, and we're closing. Kitchen is closed up, and now I'm cleaning. The waitress comes to the kitchen saying some strange people came, and they're demanding food. Boss told me to do it. Fuck. But, okay, I get paid overtime. Waitress tells me to take a look at them. A middle-aged couple and 3 teenagers. Never saw them around. I've grown up in this neighborhood and I know everyone. They came walking, there's no car in sight. Anon, look at their faces. It looked like they were using those realistic face silicone masks, but the texture was leathery. They ordered 22-ounce beers and 2 loaded fries. 3 pounds of loaded fries. Made the fries and sent them. Turned off the fryer again. 5 minutes later, the plates come back empty, but not empty. They were full of saliva. I think it was saliva because that's the only thing I can think of. Some translucent, foul-smelling goo. One huge puddle of saliva on each plate. Go to take a second look at them. They pay and leave quickly, speaking only when necessary. They leave on foot. Empty beers at the table. The teenagers drank nothing. Waitress says they devoured the fries and drank the beer like beasts. Didn't hear them talking to each other at all. Next day, my boss doesn't remember it happening. Never saw the family again. It was about 2 years ago and still don't know what happened. The real horror in this story is people coming at closing time after you already closed the kitchen, man. Be 1 year ago, to the day. 1800, meet friends in church parking lot. All 4 of us are Eagle Scouts. Will, Evan, and Brian. My name is Rob. Super excited. First in a desert trip. I have no guns, and also no 4x4. All 4 of us are crammed into Will's Ford Explorer, plus a weekend's worth of camping supplies. Reach spot at 2300. It's a rock shelf that overlooks a giant rock in California. I mentioned how it's kind of like The Hills Have Eyes. That movie scared the piss out of me for some reason. Will says that there are weird people out here. This is my nightmare.jpg. Pitch tent before it gets windy. Try to sleep. Can't. Stay up all night in sleeping bag with Evan's shotgun. Next day, after spending the early morning and mid-afternoon shooting, Will and I decide to go off-roading. His Explorer is hardly street-worthy, but we go anyway. Bring water and a .22. Having fun on a trail. Car gets stuck in sand. Fuck. 3 miles directly to camp over impassable terrain. Decide to start digging with the butt of rifle. One digs, other looks out for help. Dig until 15:30. Dude, if somebody doesn't drive by soon, we'll be here all night. I agree. Lock up car. Start walking to the giant rock itself. It's 2 miles away directly. Bring rifle and water. Start walking. It's 110. No shade. No one in sight. Will mentions how, this is really like The Hills Have Eyes. Tactical nope in my head. Chuckle and say, yeah, nervously. About a mile in now. Keep going. Pass an old rusted out Jeep. Seriously f***ing creeped out by now. Start to think about the movie. What happened and why it did. Those people were looking for help. Start to look at everything for a tactical advantage over anyone or anything. There are so many large rocks. Shadows, Joshua trees, and rocks. Can't possibly find a tactical advantage. At this point I'm freaking out. Ask Will if we can take a break. He says sure. I keep running things through my mind. See a person off in the distance. Tell Will we need to go, now. He says not to worry about it. It's probably another camper. Maybe they can help. Figure gets closer and closer. Looks humanoid, but walks like a slow monkey. Will, we need to go. Turn around. Turn back. It's gone. Call Will. He says I must not be drinking enough water. Let's radio Brigand and Evan to let them know where we are. Attempt radio contact. Nothing but static. And a faint, I'm coming. Screech in the distance. Start to get really freaked out. Tell Will we can't stay here. We continue towards the rock. See that figure again. Radio comes on and a faint, I'm coming, is heard. Something runs in front of us, about 100 yards off. Humanoid shape. Can't tell what it is for sure. Ask Will if he heard it. He says, yes, it was nothing. Let's go. What? Will, that wasn't nothing. Figure again appears to be closer. Tell Will to turn around. He does. He sees whatever it was. Actually yells, nope, out loud. Do people do that? Do people actually do that? I don't think I've ever heard someone just go, nope, when they're scared. He takes off, full sprint, towards the figure. He doesn't even have the .22. Screech is heard again, and the figure appears to be within 20 yards, but the radiating heat made it impossible to tell. I take off, run past the figure. It tears my favorite maiden shirt right off me. Keep running. Don't stop. Ran past the giant rock. Ran for probably another mile on adrenaline. See a guy on quad. Wave him down. Try to tell him what happened. He has no idea what I'm talking about. Offers me a lift to Will. He calls his friend with the Jeep to pull out the Explorer. Wait, so where did Will go? So Will ran towards the figure and then what? You lost him? But you know where he is because this guy is going to give you a ride to him? Also, you ran 2 miles in 110-degree California desert heat? Yeah, I don't know, buddy. Guy with Jeep shows up. Drive right by where the figure was standing when I ran past it. It's gone. No trace. Get Will's car out. Thank them for helping us. Head back towards camp. Ask Will to pull over. Right by where the thing took my shirt. It's gone. No shirt, no tracks, nothing. We finally get back to camp. Brian says we look pale. Will and I just nod. We have no idea what just happened. Evan says we should eat something. That might help. Agree. After eating, take spotting scope out. Set up on shelf to overlook dry lake bed. Nothing important is happening. A few fires in the distance, dust trails from other off-roaders, but about 4 miles out, see a figure. It's moving slowly. Not towards us, though. Away. Don't even bring it up. Dude, if you're seeing other fires and campers and stuff, is it completely unreasonable that someone would just be walking around? Day 2. Could not sleep at all. Stayed up. Shotgun and sleeping bag. Very windy overnight. Knocked most of our stuff down. Noticed footprints around camp. Freaked out. Keep shotgun drawn while checking camp. Evan and Brian think I'm batshit insane. Look around our fire pit. It's warm. We're missing some wood. I look into it. Scraps of my maiden shirt and what I assume are animal bones are in the pit. Nope. Tell Evan and Brian to look in it. They ask why I burned my favorite shirt. I didn't. Evan says it's time to go, now. Pack everything up. Drive away with guns out the windows. Will and I are having a breakdown. He can barely drive. Brian takes the wheel. Traveling down the climb. Notice 2 crosses on the side of the trail. They weren't there yesterday. See humanoid leaning on a Joshua tree. Brian, step on it. Creature comes out from the tree, into the middle of the trail behind us. It just stands there, and one final screech. I don't know what it was, or what I saw. I'm too pissed scared to talk about it with Will, because I don't like to talk about it, and neither does he. I suppressed it immediately afterwards, and it never came up until I got a reminder on my phone for the trip. I set it up to do yearly reminders, I guess. But fuck me, this kept me up at night for 3 weeks. I no longer wear any of my maiden shirts, and I refuse to go out there ever again. Okay, whatever, that story seemed very fake to me. Next. Not exactly paranormal, but worth posting. Be me. Be like 8. Parents decide to move out to the country, small town Nebraska. Get an old house overlooking a little valley with a creek. Valley is overgrown with cottonwoods and a prairie. Found out years later it was a game reserve. Can't be plowed or developed because it's a floodplain. Start going to school, talking to kids in lunch line one day. Girl asks where I live. I tell her. Oh, that's close to where the pigman lives. The pigman was a crazy lunatic who illegally lived in the valley near my house. Supposedly, he kept and butchered pigs and would nail their body parts to trees to mark his property. Thought it was fake, but fast forward 4 years. Me and my friends are playing on a maintenance dirt road in the valley. Find a tree, pig leg nailed to it. Creeps us out, but we keep walking. We think we're badass, infiltrating pigman's lair. Go a mile down the road. Trees are overgrown, cottonwoods cover the road like a tunnel. Leaves shudder really loud in the wind. Find an old driveway. Massive pig head draped over a fence post near the gate. Shit was bloody, covered in flies, and had tusks. Sprint out of there. I think Pigman died a few years later because I never saw anything like this again and people stopped talking about him. Apparently he was squatting on public land, but no one could do anything about him because, well, how do you get rid of the insane half-feral guy nailing pig parts to trees? Pretty sure I found his house while hunting a few years later. Old railroad boxcar with furniture in it, illegally wired to a pole. Was full of pig bones and smelled worse than hell. A buddy of mine cleaned it out and still uses it as a hunting shed. Bet it's haunted. Be about 5 to 7. Be at some local baseball tournament for small businesses. It's in an open field, shitloads of people everywhere. See a group of about 4 to 5 teenagers walk into a porta potty together. Know they can't all fit, so I wonder why they all went in. Walk over to porta potty and open the door to peek in. How do you open the door? Did they didn't lock it? See no teenagers. Pink carpet where the floor should be. No toilet. Hear thumping footsteps to my left. Look over. There's a flight of pink carpeted stairs where the wall should be. See 2 teenagers walking up the stairs into a room at the top. In the room, see 1 teenager sitting on a bed to the right of the stairs, and another sitting on a chair to the left of the stairs. There's some natural light in that room, like a window. Closed door. Look and go back to family. Porta potty was in the middle of an open field. It wasn't next to anything. Trophy from that game sat in my grandmother's office for years. Okay, did that pertain to anything else in the story? Just had to flex that he got that trophy. Be me, 12-year-old Coomer. Attending Catholic school with a playground that had lots of trees, like a little forest. I get detention one day and 2 of my friends stay with me to rake leaves in the forest. It's now 6-ish p.m. and we're almost done, so we start playing around, throwing pebbles at each other. I see one of my friends hiding behind a tree and grab a fistful of gunk to shove it down his pants. As I approach him, I hear my 2 friends call out to me, and I'm weirded out because the only people left at school are a couple of teachers and the basketball team. I turn around and start hearing leaves rustling behind me, and I make a run for it. Spot my 2 friends and yell for help. One starts running away and the other looks like he's gonna shit his pants. I don't look back and keep running, eventually catching up to him and pull him by the arm to come with me. Other kid starts yelling for help. Basketball team and gym teacher run over to me and I black out from fear and exhaustion. Wake up in the arms of some teacher and I get laid down in the infirmary bed. My head is still throbbing and I ask for water, but the teacher leaves me there alone and gets the fuck back outside. Mom and Dad come to pick me up, and Dad stays in the school while my mother drives me back home. Monday comes, and everyone is talking about what happened. Shitpants kid didn't come to school. I asked around, and another friend told me he was sick. Get called to the principal's office along with the kid who ran away. My mom and his dad are there too. The nun starts apologizing to both our parents and almost begs them not to sue. I'm in the dark up to that point because my parents had asked me what happened over the weekend and wouldn't answer my questions, just comfort me and let me sleep in their bed. The guy goes on a rant about how he pays good money for his son to go there and blah blah. Mom and I are asked to step outside for a moment and then we go back in. The nun says she's going to ask us what happened. I tell her my version. She turns to the other kid and asks if he'd like to share. Kid is visibly shaken up but starts talking. He says I got separated from the two other boys and that they hear me scream, and as I made my way up the little hill, he saw a face staring back at them popping up behind a tree. He says he then saw the thing start coming up behind the tree and he started to run. Says it looked all black except the face. Nun asks him to draw the face and the kid draws some Picasso bullshit of a thing with big lips and eyes. Principal Nun says that'll be all for today and that we can return to our classroom. Mom kisses me goodbye and asks me to eat lunch inside instead of playing outside. I play outside anyway. Forest has people cutting down trees and yellow tape around it. Stay near the basketball court eating lunch with the other kid and a shit ton of other kids who wanted to hear this story, and they ask dumb shit like, was it Slender Man? We both exaggerate our stories and they're amazed. A couple of days go by, now it's Thursday and Shitpants shows up. He looks okay. I go up to him and ask why he didn't come to school. Says that he's changing schools, probably because he made a scene at home. Ask him what happened after I fainted. Says he kept staring at the forest and describes the same monster that my other friend drew. Says the thing just kept staring back at him even when people came to take us away. Ask gym teacher what happened that day, and he says he didn't see anything at the forest, but since both my friends' stories matched up describing the thing, the principal got really upset and is having the trees removed for good. I get sad because I really liked the woods. Things return to normal. Kid's dad didn't sue. My parents take me out of there and they let me attend a regular school. Never know what happened. Mom brushes it off as kids being kids. I'm 22 now and found out my dad was really into the occult and we have similar interests because I've been reading and practicing since 20. He says it's the weirdest shit he's ever seen because we couldn't have been lying since the kids saw the same thing. Says he thinks it could have been an egregore we materialized with our collective mischief, but the principal was convinced it was a demon, and that's why she had the forest cut down. Visit Algeria with family in 2009. Visit cool places around the coast. Find a tourist attraction where they let you cross the Sahara with a party of people. Most of the trip is uneventful. We reached the Libyan border. This is Gaddafi's Libya, so border control is very strict. We had to stake out in an oasis town until they processed our passes. Evening comes and our party gets a barbecue together. We're talking about the journey, but one guy is absent. A Greek dude who's mostly very talkative is staring out into the desert. I look towards the direction he is. The sun still slightly pops from the horizon. Cool, I think. But then I notice the people. In front of the sun, a group of silhouettes is standing maybe 300 meters away. I want to look away, but I can't. I stare for a few minutes, and a tap on my shoulder knocks me out of it. I walk up to the Greek dude and tap him out. He looks at me and shouts, "Wow!" He starts telling everyone about the silhouettes. The guide quickly shuts him up. He tells us not to stare because the sun messes with your eyes. Clearly bullshit, but okay. We get shooed off to our rooms. I'm chilling out with family when we hear frantic knocking. It's the Greek. He's freaking out. "You saw it. You did? I know you did." He kept talking about the silhouettes. He then dragged me out of the room and told me to follow him. He told me to look around. I saw small blue and yellow dots in the horizon. No matter which way you looked, they were there. Greek is going nuts. Then, two of the blue dots start getting bigger. I tell Greek to shut the fuck up. The dots get very bright. A blue light illuminates my body. I start feeling very exhausted. Me and Greek fall on the ground. We both start vomiting. Then, someone comes out with the brightest flashlight I've ever seen. I get a glance at what was being illuminated. It was a humanoid figure. It was wearing a skull covered in arms. Pic related is a sketch of what I saw. It retreats back into the darkness. This dude screams at us in Arabic. The guide comes and slaps us with a sandal, tells us to get the fuck in and not to come out until dawn. Dawn comes and we pass through Libya with no trouble. The whole journey, me and the Greek are silent. Guide doesn't even want to look at us. When we come back to Algeria, Guide advises us to go to the hospital. I do. Doctors ask weird questions like, any bad dreams, hallucinations, relatives seeming like strangers? Answer no to all. They let me out. Feel uneasy the rest of the trip. Time for some OC. I don't even give a shit if anyone believes me. I just want to get it off my chest. Live in boonies, basically forest. Gerrymandered by houses and farms that go in and out of repair. There are several other houses right by mine, but I talk to the neighbors exactly none. A fact I'm glad for, because the community looks like some straight up Silent Hill shit sometimes. There's like a weekly spoopy happening, to the point where I got so bored with it I just shrug it off as the status quo. Several weeks back, this changed. The time is 10 a.m., and I'm savoring being a lazy fuck for not having to go into work that day, drifting in and out of sleep. Suddenly, ear-splitting roar. All of my what? Check laptop. I do comedy YouTube playlists to help me get to sleep. Just music tends to put me on edge for whatever reason, so I see if it's an ad. There's no ad playing. Halfway through a 2-hour video. Nothing in Darkseid 2 makes the sound I just heard. Even if it had been, something that loud would have blown out my laptop's rather shitty speakers. Slightly confused, turn off pending alarm and drift in and out of consciousness with laptop on my bed so I can roll over and check if I hear it again. 2 hours later, halfway conscious. Shroink, motherfucker, forgot about me? The roar both sounded louder and closer, as well as clearer. It sounded like the bastard child of a bear roar and that foghorn cry Godzilla makes. Tactically, what? Sounded like it came from behind the house. Decide, I'm not sleeping until I find out what made that noise. Grab lightly runed oaken hiking staff. Grab fireplace poker. Bathe both in ash, as whatever the fuck made that noise was clearly not of this earth anyways. Trek in a woods. Check glove compass to double check I haven't been turned around like I had been before in the same woods. Glove compass is going beyond nuts, spinning like a top, occasionally pointing towards the direction of a clearing I've visited before with friends. I am a clearly sane, rational, and level-headed individual, so obviously, I go towards the noise. Yeah, you also have a staff with runes on it that you dip in ash before you go check it out. Yeah. As I get closer, hear thrashing in the clearing, as well as a cow. There's a dairy farm next to my house, but I don't recall Farmer Dan breeding mutants. Start to see shit that's clearly off. Large movements through the gaps in the tree line. Low rumbling sound. Unnatural heat. Suddenly very glad I hadn't changed out of my sleep shorts. Occasional burn mark on the ground. Yes, I am that moron in the horror movie that moves towards the live hellmouth, apparently. Eventually get to the clearing to see what the ruckus is about. Peek out from behind tree. It's a motherfucking dragon. Or at least what I'd assume. Think less Tolkien, more Lovecraft. It had pale gray skin that looked like boiled konjac, to the point where it appeared actively wet. It was hexapodal, balanced on 6 squatted legs that looked like an elephant's more than anything. There were a pair of massive wings on its back that looked like they could actually lift the monstrosity off the ground. Even folded, they seemed beyond massive. Its tail looked like it had been stumped, not in the way that it had been cut off, but there was some sort of bulbous mass where the tail was supposed to continue. And then there was its head and neck. It was like some kind of f***ed-up xenomorph. Recesses where its eyes obviously should have been, but they seemed to have skin over them. Yellowed teeth sticking out its closed maw on both sides, painted red with the gore of the cow it had just finished eating. And that's when my brain got a chance to catch up from holy dragon and got a chance to look at the rest of the clearing. It was totally scorched, like basically everything was blackened. Hear a snapping noise in the woods roughly to the left of me. Dragon looks up. Its head is pointed in a decidedly uncomfortable direction at me. Hide behind tree. What smells like ozone? Suddenly rushing sound, like a dam burst. About to look from behind the tree, but my judgment gets the best of me. Good f***ing thing, because I suddenly find myself a yard away from a large stream of aggressive something. To this day, I can't figure out what it was exactly. Going out of greentext here for a second, it didn't seem to be exactly fire or a flammable substance. The movement was too jerky, but it didn't spark or crackle like electricity, and I still have the right half of my body, so I'm guessing it wasn't plasma. But it was sure as f*** burning anything it touched. A spark got kicked up and burnt a sizable hole in my shirt. Begin tactically praying in Old Norse once the fire dies down. Figure I'm not escaping, so I may as well go out fighting. Jump out from behind tree ready to suicide charge a dragon. Hear rustling from the same spot as before. Boom. Same roar as before, followed by some decidedly unpleasant shrieking. Large gaping hole opened in eye recess. Hear shouting. "Get the fuck away from my cows!" Holy shit, it's Farmer Dan. Not looking at him, focusing on the big it unfurls its wings and starts flapping and takes to the sky with surprising expediency for something that had a torso the size of an RV. And it certainly felt like a large aircraft had just taken off. I was nearly blown over from the force of the wind. It circles in the air once before heading out towards the lake. Stand there for a moment, just plain vanilla dumbfounded. More movement. Brandish fireplace poker. Farmer Dan is now about 10 feet from me. The gun in his hands looked like an old-style break action, but the barrels were ridiculously large in diameter. My brain finally processes the fact that I'm being asked a question. "Non, what are you doing out here?" Try my hardest to point out that this is not the most important question to be asked in this situation. Finally managed to coax an answer out of him. Apparently, several of his longhorns went missing from the pasture, and he caught sight of it moving to that clearing after one more had disappeared. Hunter friends had apparently reported some weird goings-on in his backwoods to him. They said they'd found some freaky shit and some big-ass nest. Only one dead cow in this clearing, however, and no nest to be seen. My brain refused to examine the possible meaning of those facts at the time. Ask him about the gun. Says he uses it to hunt whatever goes after his cows. The inflection implied this was not the first supernatural entity that he'd shot using this shotgun. Farmer Dan stops me before I get back on the path. "Don't tell anybody about this, Anon. No use causing a fuss over some fairy tale nonsense." I'm not about to disagree with a man holding what I can only assume is a 2 or less gauge. Walk back home and fall asleep. Wake up later that day, assuming it was all some sort of weird dream. Look down and notice the hole in my shirt was legitimately there. Brain reeling for not dragon-related answers. Half-heartedly settle on this somehow being the shirt I'd burned slightly during a bonfire several years beforehand. Forced to confront reality when I notice said shirt is lying on the floor. Decide then and there that I'm moving to the largest city I can get to so I don't have to deal with this bullshit anymore. There was a huge rainstorm the next day, so a lot of the char was washed out, but sure enough, when I went back to that clearing several days later, it was filled with morel mushrooms, so it had to have been scorched at some point. I don't know what I saw, and I don't know if Kay would have any better idea of what it is, but if I ever know that thing's in the area again, I'm finding as many commandos as possible and leading reality's probably first dragon slaying raid. Sounds like you had off from work, you were chilling in bed, you did some drugs, maybe you burned yourself with your lighter while you were sparking up the crack pipe. I don't know. Be 2 years ago, dicking around with Polish friend. Head on to Hidden Wiki, AnonChat, etc. On AnonChan, some dude posts a link in some Cyrillic script with lots of exclamation points. Luckily enough, my buddy reads Russian, translates it. "It's up again, hurry!" Okay, why not? Click the link. Here's what we saw. 3 dudes in military uniforms, shown only from the neck down, speaking excitedly and super high-pitched and nervously in Russian. Friend reads Russian better than he speaks it, but he catches a few phrases. Basically, these guys are scared and excited. They're getting another one, etc. Eventually, it becomes clear that they're out on the ice in some random-ass lake in Siberia, ice fishing. After a few minutes of nervous chatter, assault rifles start going off. Camera swings around wildly, eventually focusing on a poorly lit hole in the ice. Gurgling and splashing noises coming from it. These dudes and others are just straight up pumping bursts down the hole. Eventually, after another few minutes, these dudes use long, hooked poles to dig around and then heave something up. Shit you not, 20-plus foot-long fish-like snake-looking thing, at least 3.5 feet in diameter. I'd say it was an anaconda, but it was brown and had really nasty, flabby fins that grabbed and stretched out, full of sea lice and holes and shit. Big black eyes, mouth full of the gnarliest teeth I've ever seen. Huge air sacs on its underside, looked like a lungfish or something. Video cuts to a series of photos of the thing, better lit than the video, presumably because they're shot with flash. Mottled brown skin with plenty of blood smeared all over it from the bullets and scraping the sides of the hole when they pulled it out. One of the pictures showed me what I'm guessing was the contents of its stomach, and there was all sorts of crazy shit in there. Don't go swimming in Russia. In a Siberian ice lake? No, I don't think I will. Thank you, though. Well, there you go. There's some spooky stories. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.